Hello, good afternoon everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this Good Employment Charter webinar on employability and our LGBTQ+ community. So before we start, I'll just go through a bit of housekeeping. This webinar platform tends to work best on Chrome, so if you are currently on a different platform, I'd suggest you open Chrome browser and move to that instead. If you have any audio or visual issues, I would try refreshing the page because that tends to help. You can see on the right hand side of the screen we've got a question and answer tab, so please ask as many questions as you like. We'll be posting those to the speakers at the end. Please feel free to introduce yourselves to one another. The chat function is there and it's moderated. Just a reminder that these sessions are all going to be recorded and they'll be available on our website and on YouTube afterwards. We will also be preparing a blog on the issues raised in this webinar, which will be available on our website. Sorry, I must apologise. I'm in a workspace at the moment and there's a little bit of banging, so if you can hear that, please forgive me. So, first of all, I'd like to start by welcoming some of our new supporters to the Good Employment Charter webinar. It should be appearing on the slides shortly. So, it's fundamental to the foundation of good employment that we ensure equality in the workplace, and we're delighted that in Pride Month we've got such a distinguished panel to provide insight and advice on how the LGBTQ+ community can be fully integrated and supported into the workplace. So I'm absolutely delighted to present our speakers for today. We are joined by Carl Austin-Behan OBE DL, who is the LGBTQ+ advisor to the Mayor of Manchester. We have Lucy Bradbury, who's the Sustainability Manager for AECOM and the Greater Manchester Co-Chair at Building Equality. And we have Mark Crossfield, who is the Technical Architect at AutoTrader and the LGBT+ Network Co-Lead. So good employers who recognise diversity of experiences in the community, as well as the power dynamics that exist within it, have the best chance of developing a truly inclusive and productive culture. So we know that LGBTQ+ individuals haven't always reaped the rewards of inclusion efforts in the workplace, and we must all commit to reflecting and supporting underrepresented members of our community. So Carl, I'd like to start with you, please. So in your role as advisor to the Mayor, what are the key strategic issues that Greater Manchester employers should be thinking about in this area, and what are the priorities for action? Carl.
Sorry, yes. Technical issue straight away. Obviously, I forgot to unmute. No, thanks for that. Yes, my name is Carl Austin-Behan. I'm a white cis male, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. So I just want to put it into content a little bit first about why EDI is important in the workplace, and to take us back a little while. So in 1991, I joined the RAF as a firefighter. I had a fantastic career ahead of me. In 1992, I received the British Humane Society Bronze Award for bravery for rescuing a pilot from a burning aircraft. I was mentioned in the Queen's Birthday Honours list in 1996 with a Commander-in-Chief's commendation. I'd served for 6 years. I'd just been promoted, it had been awarded, which was unheard of in such a short time. It would normally be between sort of 9 and 12 years. But I'd excelled in all manner of performance with constant 9s and specially recommended in each appraisal for 4 years in a row. I'd signed up for 22 years. Then in April 1997, the RAF were informed that I was gay. Back then, it was illegal to be serving within the military. My life changed immediately. I lost my home, I lost my friends, I lost my career, I lost everything overnight in one foul swoop. I could have gone to military prison for 6 months just for being gay. And that's only 24 years ago. On my service record, it states that I was discharged for being incompatible to service life. Now, I did try and sort of challenge that because it was incompatible to service life due to being a homosexual. I tried to fight it. I wrote to the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, I wrote to my MP, Graham Stringer, and to the MOD. It got nowhere because that was the law at the time. The gay ban was only lifted on the 12th of January 2000. I then applied for Great Manchester Fire Service. During the interview panel and the test that I had to do, I hadn't told them that I was gay. I was successful, and I only told them this once I'd received my contract. and the date to start my employment, which was April 1998. I was then brought in. I then told them that I was gay. I was then brought in, and I was told that I wasn't able to disclose my sexuality to the rest of the course, as it was residential and it might have implications on the training. I managed to keep it quiet for about 2 or 3 weeks, but by keeping it to myself. But this was making me depressed, anxious, nervous, and certainly couldn't concentrate on the training. I just had to leave an institution which I absolutely loved because it was illegal, yet it was legal now. Yet I was made to feel ashamed, paranoid, and disgusted about myself just because of who I was. I ended up telling the lads, and the lads were fine. It was the senior managers of the hierarchy who had the issue. Then I realised I caused an issue. They had no equality, diversity, or inclusion training or awareness within Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service at all. They quickly pulled a husband and wife team together who had apparently spoken in the past about knowing someone who was gay. They became the EDA managers, but actually nobody knows whether they actually like the gay person, just that they admitted knowing one. Okay, so there's my personal stories from 20 to 24 years ago. I know we've come a long way, but within the workplace, there's still so much more to do, especially in certain sectors. Now, Greater Manchester, amazing as it is home to an estimated 215,000 LGBTQ plus population. It's a population larger than the borough of Rochdale, and LGBTQ plus people face a significant number of inequalities compared to heterosexuals, from poorer physical and mental health, increased risk of hate crime and discrimination, to loneliness and isolation, and negative experiences in employment. Now, during this next hour, you're going to be hearing the words LGBTQ a lot. And I know that businesses sometimes struggle understanding the acronym and the various letters that have been added over the years. It can be overwhelming. So for LGBTQ+, this is lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer or questioning, and the plus identifies with those who identify in another way, such as intersex, asexual, pansexual, non-binary, etc. So just to run through a couple of those: bisexual, a person who's emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to people of their gender or other genders. Cisgender is a person who identifies as the gender and the biological sex they were assigned with at birth, often shortened to cis. Gay, a person who is emotionally, physically, or sexually attracted to members of the same sex and/or gender, and that can be men and women. Lesbian is a woman who is emotionally, physically, or sexually attracted to women. Now, recently, a lot of women and younger females, refer to themselves as gay rather than lesbian. Non-binary, an umbrella term for those whose gender doesn't fit the man or woman binary. And pansexual, a person who is emotionally, romantically, and or sexually attracted to people regardless of their gender or sex. And this attraction doesn't have to be equally split across genders or sexes. And transgender, an umbrella term to describe someone who identifies as a different gender than the one assigned at birth. Transgender people may describe themselves using one or more of a variety of terms, including but not limited to gender fluid, non-binary, agender, trans man, trans woman, and it's shortened to trans. Now, queer, historically a derogatory term for LGBTQ plus people, has been reclaimed by some, not all, but some, and a lot of LGBTQ plus people like to be known within the community as queer. Now, you may see it in my terminology is my pronouns, he, him, his, and you'll notice that when we introduce ourselves, we use our pronouns. We use them all the time to identify and refer to someone, describing people as he or she. Groups of other people, of they and them, as well as trying to explain how pronouns work. But some people may not know that there are many valid gender-neutral pronouns that's becoming increasingly common. And this would be slightly use the word they or ze. And using gender pronouns means we don't associate the person we're talking about with a specific gender. It helps people respectively refer to one another, and if staff make mistakes using people's misgendering people, all you got to do is apologise, but then make sure you do it right. So working to improve LGBTQ plus awareness can have a long-term impact in organisations by creating workplaces and services that are accessible and which can be proactively demonstrate that considering the needs of all staff and users. All organisations can promote inclusion for the LGBTQ plus communities in Greater Manchester, and there's many different ways to build and maintain an inclusive environment for all staff. Providing LGBTQ plus awareness training for staff and facilitating staff networks to celebrate LGBTQ plus visibility days and supporting local events. Training is fundamental to increase awareness. It improves knowledge within staff teams. It raises the visibility of existence of LGBT people within the staff and within specific training groups. Too many LGBT staff continue to have poor experiences in all areas of life, including the workplace. And when accessing services such as experiencing bullying and hearing discrimination remarks, we need to communicate about why the disability are varying and a zero tolerance policy. Actively celebrating LGBTQ plus awareness days, such as LGBT History Month, Pride Month, International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia can help awareness. Now, I'm involved with various groups across Greater Manchester. We've got the Pro Manchester EDI group, we've got various staff networks, and this year we also had the Census 2021, and for the first time, there was questions about gender identity and sexual orientation. So it's important that we follow that through and we make sure that people are treated with respect. And this is why we need to make sure that right across Greater Manchester and within the workplaces, that everybody is treated with respect and treated as equal. I have a massive thing about when it comes to Pride Month, when people start rainbow washing, when they just put a rainbow on the logo. It has to be permanent visibility. So permanent visibility is permanent access. Permanent visibility is permanent visibility is permanent existence. So that's so many times today, and I just went lost for words then. But it's really important, and there's various groups and organisations, whether you go through the Proud Trust, whether you go through the LGBT Foundation, whether you go through Stonewall for training, there's plenty of training out there, and it has to be done, and it has to be done correctly, and not also done just for having a tick box. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about they're on the Stonewall Equality Index. That's great, but as part of an employee, you need to know what actually that is about, and it's not just about being a tick box on a bit of paperwork. So that's why, for me, it's fundamental that we make sure that everyone who's LGBTQ plus has the same rights in the workplace as everybody else.
That's lovely. Thanks very much for that, Carl. Just a reminder, if you have any questions at all for the speakers, please do feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll be answering those later on. So Lucy, yourself and your colleagues in the construction sector have taken action together and formed Building Equality. So can you tell us a little bit more about the initiative and the resources that you've developed, please?
Thanks, Alexia. Hi, everyone. I'll do a quick introduction first. So Lucy Bradbury, my pronouns are she and her. I'm the Sustainability Manager for AECOM Europe, and I sponsor AECOM's LGBTQ plus employee resource group. I also co-chair Building Equality in Greater Manchester. So I thought I could do a quick intro into what Building Equality are all about, and then some of the events and resources we've got planned as well. So for anyone who's not heard of us before, Building Equality are an alliance of construction and engineering organisations. So that's consultants, engineers, developers, contractors, and institutions who are passionate about working together and harnessing our collective power to drive LGBTQ plus inclusion in our industries. One of kind of the things that I find really interesting and like best about Building Equality is, if I'm being honest, it's made up of organisations that I would usually consider competitors to AECOM, but in this case we kind of put that to one side and work together for the greater good to implement positive change. Our kind of overarching vision is to have an industry that's wholly welcoming, inclusive and supportive of LGBTQ plus individuals. I'm Manchester based, but we've got a presence across the UK with around 60 organisations nationally. We regularly participate in joint initiatives to support LGBTQ plus inclusion, and we've got recruitment firm Hayes as our executive sponsor as well. So what do we actually do? You may well have already seen us at some regional and industry events. So we bring the industry together to discuss key inclusion and diversity issues, trying to ensure that cross-industry collaboration. So it's not always construction engineering in the traditional sense. We also collaborate with law firms, insurance firms, construction finance companies, as well as a lot of our clients. And our events can be a real mix. So we've got a knowledge share webinar series, which you might have seen, where we cover a different topic every couple of months. So for example, I did one a while back on advancing gender diversity advocacy, and I've done interviews with Manchester organisations like Homes England, Jacobs, and the Institute of Civil Engineers. But we do lots of fun stuff as well that kind of goes on in the background. During lockdown, we celebrated Building Equality's 5th birthday online, and did bingo, happy hour, and a quiz. And we're a very kind of social and friendly group as well as trying to address some of the really serious issues that the industry faces. We do a lot of outreach days and public engagement, which you can imagine has been very interesting the last 18 months. We try to provide information to the general public on the construction industry and specifically highlight its accessibility to LGBTQ plus individuals. If you're based in Manchester, you might have already seen us stood in the city centre at Exchange Square with a giant rainbow JCB. And we encourage families and students to kind of come and talk to us and see what the industry is really like and try and dispel some of those old school myths. These days, thanks to the pandemic, it's less outreach days and more outreach online events, but we're really hoping to restart in-person events around August time. I have got everything crossed that we will be going to Manchester Pride at the end of August this year. So we started back in 2015 with just 3 organisations, and since then we've expanded across the UK, won a number of industry awards, and really ramped up the number of events that we host as well. I am genuinely really proud of how far we've come in such a short amount of time. Back in 2015, it was kind of unfathomable to me to have a construction organisation really kind of proud in the Pride Parade at Manchester. And now this year, we're talking about having nearly 250 people walk in the parade under the Building Equality banner. So we've come a very long way. That being said, as you can imagine, we still have some serious work to do, but we're in such a better position than we were when I first joined a few years ago. The first time that we presented the Allies Toolbox talk, which I'm going to go through shortly, we had around 250 people join virtually, and we've had really good engagement in our knowledge share webinar series recently. We do have a whole host of free resources on our website, and they are open to the general public, so I recommend taking a look if you haven't already. So onto the actual Allies Toolbox talk itself. For those of you who've never heard of it, it's essentially a presentation aimed at educating the workforce. So that includes our clients and our suppliers, empowering colleagues across the industry to become active allies to the LGBTQ plus community. I should point out, I didn't actually write all of this Toolbox talk. It was the Building Equality Committee, and they've done an amazing job. But essentially it came about because we all acknowledged that allies have such an important role to play. And speaking to some of our clients recently, I think a lot of us are in the same boat in kind of waking up to the importance of allyship. So it's a free resource that you can download from our Building Equality website, which explores the importance of allies and how individuals and businesses can make a positive difference through making small changes. It also explains some of the LGBTQ plus terminology that Carl went through before, and we're trying to kind of widen that understanding of the community, as well as some of their sort of day-to-day challenges that we still need to overcome. I'm not going to present the talk itself today because all in all it would take about an hour, and I know Mark has lots of good stuff to talk about after me, but essentially the way we've designed it is so anybody can present it. So it's a PowerPoint presentation, and it comes with a pre-prepared script for every slide. And the idea is that you present as much or as little of that as you want. So it covers the 6 areas that you can see on the screen. But if you didn't have time to do all that, or you didn't want to go through all of that, you could say cover just sections 2 and 3. Delete everything else. And I think the presentation still works really well as a 20 or 30-minute briefing rather than doing a full hour. We've also got a PDF document which explains things like what do all the different community flags mean, and it can point you to further resources as well. So there's things like films and podcasts to follow up on. if you really wanted to, there is even a recording of the Toolbox talk, so you can watch it back and memorize it if that's how you kind of learn best. And of course, you can always reach out to the committee ourselves as well, and I'm happy to chat about how our companies can work together. So just quickly wrap up my part. In terms of how we can get involved, we're always interested. We have regional chairs across the country now, and we are always looking for members to join. Building equality is very much kind of a case of the more the merrier. But in the meantime, I would say go and check out those resources on the website I was talking about before. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter for updates. And of course, you can always reach out to me direct with any questions as well. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you so much for that, Lucy. And just a reminder that all of the resources and toolkits are available to our supporters and members and can be accessed on Lucy's website. So, Mark, we've heard about the strategic issues and learned a bit about some of the supporting resources that are available to employers. But as an employer, can you tell us a bit more about what AutoTrader have done to make the work environment more inclusive for the LGBTQ+ community?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alexia. So as Lucy did, I'm going to just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Mark Crossfield. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a technical lead, AutoTrader. I'm also the LGBT network co-lead. Based in Manchester. If you don't know about AutoTrader, that's our website. We have a careers website, and also outside work, I have a strange hobby and fascination with underground and hidden things in Manchester. So I have a map. Please feel free to get in touch with me. So around all this stuff, I'm going to say that the most important thing I'm going to say today is, I think if you give people who care the permission, space and support that they need to improve things, that's the key message of this presentation really today. So a little bit about AutoTrader and where we came from, because not everybody knows about us and what we do. Back in 1977, we were launched as the Thames Valley Trader, small newspaper / magazine. Back in '96, we had our first website, so that was quite a long time ago now. Then jumping forward to 2013, and a chap called Trevor joined us as a CEO. So we've got a new CEO. Trevor had come in from ThoughtWorks International Consultancy. And then in 2014, we made a move and consolidated our offices. We were based in Newton Le Willows, and we moved into central Manchester, where we're now based at First Street. And then going back to the beginning of our sort of diversity and inclusion journey, this goes back to about 2015. So in 2015, some senior leaders decided that we should do something around diversity and inclusion. And they got in touch with the CEO, they had a conversation, and Trevor was really receptive. And the next step was to talk to the board. So those people were introduced to the board by Trevor as experts, and they spoke to the board, made a compelling case. And this was our business case. This is the first thing that we did, really. We made a business case about why it's important to think about D&I in an organisation such as ours. So the key things there is that the CEO introduced the leaders to the board as experts. That gave them credibility. Support then came from the top of the business, and that was critical and has been critical around diversity and inclusion at AutoTrader. And that meant that those who were involved felt absolutely free to follow the right path themselves. So a workshop happened. There was a diversity and inclusion workshop with a bunch of people getting involved, talking about what we should do at AutoTrader. And out of that, there were some conclusions. Our initial focus was on gender, and we've widened out a lot since then. And in 2016, we had a diversity and inclusion guild that had come together. So a guild in AutoTrader terms is a bunch of people from different parts of the business. It's quite open, lots of different disciplines. And they set out their initial strategy. And that guild still exists. So key things about our guild, the members are drawn from interested people across the organization and really motivated people who have the capacity to actually make change and not just talk about it. And this hasn't ever been treated as just a people team thing. So we call our HR team our people team. It's not been treated as something that just belongs to the people team. This is a thing that crosses our whole business. And I think that's really important, because often things can be kind of sidelined as HR initiatives. And this is something that includes everyone, and we wanted everybody to be able to collaborate. And having a guild that crosses all the different sorts of diversity at AutoTrader and has all those different people involved provides an opportunity for us to approach things in a more intersectional way. So rather than just being siloed and talking about LGBT+, we can consider how issues might impact other characteristics. We then, in 2018, we formed an LGBT+ network. So at this point, we already had a women's network and we already had a BAME network. And we formed in 2018, and that's the point at which I got involved. So at this point, the Diversity and Inclusion Guild went out and they looked for LGBT+ people they were aware of who were motivated to get involved. We discussed what the network should focus on and gave them our steer as LGBT+ people. And we decided that it was really important for us to be internal first. We didn't want to go out with a big message and ignore our staff. So we decided we wanted to focus on how we could make sure that the experience at AutoTrader was correct before we started going out and talking about what we do. Another thing that was really critical at this point is that we engaged some external experience. So we've worked with Stonewall amongst other organisations over the years, and we took part in the Workplace Quality Index. But as Carl says, absolutely agree, it's not just an index. Actually, some of the feedback we get back from that is incredibly useful, and it's useful to have somebody who has experience in lots of different sectors to be able to kind of advise us on what we can do internally. And another key thing is that we've always been sponsored by a senior leader. So from the very beginning, our network was led by one of our operational leadership team, our senior leadership team. And to this day, we have a sponsor who's actually our COO. And that's really important because it lends credibility to the issue and helps us to recognise people's contributions. Now, a really critical thing about how we do this at AutoTrader is that we steer it from our people. It's not steered top down. So the number of ways we do this, we fill in a diversity profile in our people system, and then we use that data when we do employee check-in surveys, and that allows us to kind of cut the data and cut the responses in different ways, and we can drill in looking at various issues and various intersections of people. Another really important thing is that we do make mistakes. We've made plenty of mistakes, and we've also always felt really safe doing so. So we might have received criticism from people, but never from a leadership perspective. It's always from people in the organisation, and I think that's natural. I'd never led a network before we got involved in this, but those ideas and that criticism that come from our people have been channeled to provide the best results. And I'd say one of the best interactions we had was somebody talking to one of our members about how we weren't really doing enough around bi people and how it was a bit of a shambles. And this was done actually the day that they saw me putting up some posters about Bi Visibility Day. Unfortunately, that was a day after Bi Visibility Day, and that person was so motivated to complain and point out that we should be doing better that actually they're now a really, really active member of our network, and they help to facilitate things. And that's what I mean when I say you can channel these things. And I'd say suggestions and requests across all of our networks have informed the majority of the initiatives that we actually do. So the ideas come from our people. Some of the things we've done for specifics, lots of education around sexualities and different gender identities, and we'll do these in a variety of formats. We've done drop-ins, we've done training sessions. So there is a diversity inclusion training session that everybody at AutoTrader goes through, and our network actually helped to provide part of that. We do blog posts, usually those are external, but also internal, and they help to provide people with a perspective from somebody who maybe identifies as pan or somebody who identifies as non-binary. We've done various communication campaigns internally as well, and we take part in LGBT+ History Month each year, and usually that's quite an internally focused thing around just making sure that people understand the history of LGBT+. Another big thing we did was helping our people team develop some transitioning guidance for employees and for managers who might be managing people who are transitioning. We felt that was really important. There's lots of policy that explains to people what support is available, and we really wanted to explain to people that this is something that we're happy to support as an organisation. But we also recognise that we needed to support the people around someone who's transitioning. It's a very misunderstood or complicated subject, so people are quite scared of it. So that's something that we've done. We've also been through policies and replaced gendered language with gender neutral language so that people don't feel alienated when they're reading a policy that involves them. And for example, our adoption policy now provides parity with maternity leave, which means that it's fairer for a same-sex couple who have chosen to adopt or any other couple who have chosen to adopt. So things that our network focuses on, this is a summary of our commitments. We have 5 commitments and we refresh these each year, but these actually only develop a little bit each year. They're mostly static. So one of the things that we think is really important is engaging closely with the local and automotive communities. And this year we are focusing more on automotive. We think that's really important because we're quite an influential brand in the automotive world, and we know that there's a lot that we can offer other organisations. Improving visibility and understanding of our bi, pan, trans and other underrepresented colleagues. So that might be non-binary people, trans men, trans women. And making sure that really that their identities are understood by the rest of the organisation. Making sure our employees feel part of the LGBT+ network. We want them to feel really engaged. We want them to be aware of what we do. We want them to be aware of the support that's available and how they can get involved themselves. Contributing to the career development of LGBT+ employees is something we try to do by promoting any training that's coming up in our LGBT+ network channel, and generally making sure that people are aware of things. We've also more recently, at AutoTrader, we've started a diverse talent accelerator, which is focused more at underrepresented characteristics in some of our more senior roles. And so we've got people who are LGBT+, we've got people who are women, people who are BAME, people who have disability or neurodiversity going through that programme. And we think it's really important for us to work closely with our Health and Wellbeing Guild and our Disability and Neurodiversity Network. We noticed in one of our surveys that a very high percentage of our LGBT+ staff identified as disabled or having a disability or long-term health condition. And so that's something that we really want to focus on, how we can support them, try and understand a little bit more behind why that is and how it impacts them, and what their unique experience is really of being disabled and LGBT+. So just, we rely on our facilitators. We feel that it's a very people-led movement. We want to make sure that we get the most out of people, and we get the most out of people when they're valued and supported. It's really, really important to recognise people's contributions. This shouldn't be side of desk work. This shouldn't be something you do while no one's looking. So we've actually formalised a description of what we expect of our network facilitators and our network leads, and we explain how many hours a week we generally expect them to work on this. And we talk to their managers about this, because we think it's really important that people's managers recognise what that person's doing, and that it's not just a distraction from their day job. And we think that this is a unique opportunity really for people to lead work. So facilitators who might not normally get an opportunity to lead a project now get the opportunity to get involved in an initiative that they really care about. And it's, as I say, it's a unique way to provide opportunities for leadership to actually what is a really diverse bunch of people, which automatically should help your organisation have a more diverse leadership team. So in summary, support from the top should allow you to build a strategy with your people. The strategy should not be top down. Go wide, engage with people who care enough to complain, and get them to lead initiatives. Use data from whatever people system you have to look for areas that you should focus on, and really don't be afraid to make mistakes. It'll happen, and you can sometimes turn them into successes. And that's me again.
Lovely, thanks very much, Mark. And just a reminder again that if you have any questions or answers, please put them in the chat. It's excellent to hear how an employer is actually putting this into practice, and to hear that it's such an employee-focused approach. So I'll just go through any questions that we've currently got, and then I'll open it up to the floor. And I've got some questions myself. So we had a question earlier on about recommending a comprehensive training program or a trainer. I know that Carl's provided some information on the LGBT Foundation. Could I just open it up to the speakers? Do you have any additional resources that people might want to access?
Sure. So as I say, we worked for Stonewall. We found the results from their survey to be really useful. So as a diversity champion, you fill in a very comprehensive report about the activities that the organisation undertakes, and then that's reviewed, and you get sort of 2 or 3 hours you can get discussing actually some of the recommendations. In terms of comprehensive stuff, I can't really provide a better solution than Carl's, really. I would say that there's sometimes some specific issues that you might wish to seek training on. So we've worked with Gendered Intelligence as well, who have come in and done training sessions and also lunch and learn sessions around understanding gender identity. And that might be around trans, might be around non-binary. And Manchester Pride as well, actually, worth pointing out. Manchester Pride have their All Equals Charter, which is another way of measuring your organisation. And once again, somebody will review the results with you and go through and come back with some recommendations, some advice. And actually, it's really useful to have somebody external to talk through those issues with.
There's also the Proud Trust as well, which are based in Manchester as well, which do a lot of work. I know that both AutoTrader and Building Equality do a lot of work with the Proud Trust, and they do a lot of stuff with schools, but they also do a lot of work with businesses to make sure that they're sort of giving the right information out for people, and it's quite it's straightforward.
Carl frozen.
Oh, I didn't know if it was my internet or
No, I think Carl's frozen. Proud Trust is the great shout, actually.
Yeah.
They've recently launched an online portal with some really well-designed resources that are mostly aimed at people who are maybe supporting or working with children, and also aimed at children, youth in general. So that's definitely another one to check out.
Oh, excellent, fantastic. Right, so I've got one or two questions, actually. So first one, so most progressive employers, they'll be open to engaging with this agenda, but they might perhaps be put off by getting the language wrong and maybe back off in fear of offending someone. So do you have any advice for employers on this? Is it vital that they get the language right, for example?
We're sort of seeing something similar in construction, and language is super important. It's one of my pet peeves when you see, the industry's come a long way. They'll write these amazing articles that you just wouldn't have seen a few years ago, and then there's just the odd language bit here and there that isn't quite right, and that's quite frustrating to see. But that absolutely should not put you off. I get really concerned that the people feel like the conversation has moved on too far, too fast, and so they get a little bit frightened and don't want to engage in it. And actually just kind of closing down and saying, I'm not having anything to do with this, is probably the worst possible thing you could do. I would much rather someone came to me and said, I don't understand this, or I have no idea why this is relevant to me, or did, like I've seen some companies do, put out articles that are imperfect. That is always better than just doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. As I said, I think mistakes will always be made. The fascinating thing about language is how much it changes over the years and develops. And, it's something I think people will always recognize. It's very much a moving target. And I think as Carl said at the beginning around misgendering people and actually apologizing, generally people understand your intent. People will recognize that you have positive intent. And it's how you then handle the fact that somebody points out the language. If you react to it well, they will take that as a positive reaction.
Excellent, thank you. So I know we've already spoken about resources and things that employers can use to educate themselves. Is there anything more that we should be saying on that, or I think we've covered that now, haven't we? So if you were to give an employer one piece of advice or one piece of action to take to become more inclusive to the LGBTQ plus community, what would that be?
I think employers need, if they're not already doing or not already part of a staff network, then definitely sort of have a staff network to make them feel that the staff are included. And I mean, for everything that Lucy's doing with Building Equality, one thing I think that is fantastic with that is, even if you're only a small business or you're a small organisation, you can easily tap into the whole resources that Building Equality have got. Again, with the work that, with part of the EDI that I've been doing with Pro Manchester, Pro Manchester have got like a women's network, they've got like all different networks, and part of the EDI in that as well means that you can tap into so many different, you might only be a small business, you might only be a small company, you might only have 5 employees, but if 2 of your employees identify as LGBTQ, or plus, then be a part of another network, and that's a big thing. And also, to sort of have that visibility. I know we're all sat here, we've all got rainbows behind us, and you know, it is that thing. It's about the visibility. It's to let people know, and it's not necessarily about us just thinking it's great to have a rainbow. It's for those people who may be coming into your workplace, who may not be out, who may feel uncomfortable, who may sort of have suffered from discrimination in their last workplace, to come into AutoTrader, see rainbow lanyards, to see sort of a rainbow there, to see visibility, makes a massive difference. So do it for the right reasons. Don't just do it because you have to, or you feel that you're being pushed into it. Do it because you want to. Do it because it's right. Do it because you're only going to get the best out of anybody if they can bring their true selves to work.
Yeah, spot on. I think that's exactly the advice I'd give. Start small. Don't feel like you have to kind of crack it all in one go, but equally you don't have to reinvent the wheel. This call is proof that there is so much good resource out there to help you now. I'm a bit of a perfectionist and a bit of a people pleaser, both of which are not very helpful qualities in the equity, diversity and inclusion space. When you look at the attendees of building equality companies, we're probably in the hundreds of thousands. AECOM alone is kind of pushing 50,000. There's no way you're going to get that right with every single person every time. But sometimes that can feel so daunting, you sort of spin your wheels. Actually chip away with it, start with those small committees, join other committees if you're not getting engagement. And the internet is an incredible place. There is just so much there to help you now.
Absolutely. Brilliant. I can't really follow those, but I would say for an organisation to actually make a statement publicly, visibly about inclusion and about and naming some characteristics, I think it's a very powerful thing. I know before I was involved in our LGBT plus network, I didn't attend the first Pride that we took part in, but it made me feel so proud that there was 100 or so people dressed as Dalmatians, I think, for AutoTrader walking the streets, people with their families, and it actually gave me a good kick up the bum to do more. So I think making those statements can make people feel more included. They can feel like really small things, but they can actually mean a lot to an individual. And as Carl said, there's so many organizations that will help. And as Lucy said, I also love the fact that there's very little competition in this space. So if you have a conversation with one of your partners, one of your customers, one of the people who supply you, find out what they're doing, because generally people are really, really, really happy to share this stuff. That's something we do as an organization. We think we get a lot out of it, and we think it's really valuable. It's a big part of our commitment this year. Those resources that people pour hours and hours into, they are absolutely shareable, and they will work in your organization. There is no point in reinventing the wheel. So that was something I meant to say in my talk, actually. We're planning to start sharing some of our resources on LinkedIn. I think anywhere where people share and where you can download a document that you can then tweak a little bit, I would guess that our transitioning guidelines shouldn't be that different to other people. So that's a good starting point. So yeah, try and copy as much as you can.
Yeah, and I'll push that, because the amount of times that I send people to build inequality with that toolkit, because I was there on when you did the launch of that, and I just think it's an amazing toolkit, especially when you're thinking about the construction industry and you're thinking about the typical workers within that industry. I think it speaks volumes, the fact that they've done so much work in that field. And Mark, you're right. I was Lord Mayor the year when they did the 101 Dalmatians, and I gave a special award for that, because the only reason why they had 101 Dalmatians was because over 100 people volunteered to be part of the first Pride Parade, and they didn't know what to do. So it was a case of, right, we're going to come up with that, and it worked brilliantly. And everybody wanted to be a part of it, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always surprised me how many people want to be involved in Pride, and it's turned into a really lovely family event where people, and I'm also hoping that it goes ahead this year and we're able to attend physically and represent again.
Yeah, my first one was 2019, I think, when there was the space theme, and we turned up at a warehouse at 7 a.m. to get ready. 200 builders dressed as aliens was probably the most surreal moment of my life, as aliens with hard hats, I should add as well. That was a nice touch. But that stuff is just amazing to see now, and kind of testament to how far we've come as well.
I won't mention how far back my first Pride was.
Gosh, lovely. Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat function. So I'd just like to thank our speakers once more. I think we've all learned a huge amount today. And this webinar is going to be available on YouTube on our website, and we'll send out the link as well. It's a reminder that the Good Employment Charter podcast is also available on our website. We've had a number of prominent speakers feature on the podcast, as you can see from the slide on the screen. So that wraps up the webinar for today. We have another one scheduled for the 22nd of July, so I do hope you'll be able to join us. But thank you once again for your speakers for attending today. It's been a fantastic webinar, and wish you all a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.